You meet someone. They tell you their name. You repeat it back to them. You even say something like, "Nice to meet you." And 3 minutes later, when you need to introduce them to someone else, your brain just goes completely blank. If this happens to you all the time, you have probably called yourself terrible with names. You have probably felt embarrassed in front of people you actually like and respect, watching their face shift slightly because you clearly forgot something they told you just minutes ago. Here is the thing nobody tells you. This is not really about being careless. It is not about not caring about people. There is something genuinely interesting happening in your brain when this keeps happening, and once you understand it, you'll probably stop being so hard on yourself.
Let us start with the most basic thing most people get completely wrong. Names are actually one of the hardest things for your brain to hold on to, even though they feel like they should be the easiest. Think about it like this. When someone tells you their job, you can connect it to something. Teacher, you picture a classroom. Nurse, you picture a hospital. Your brain has something to attach that information to. But a name is just a sound. It does not naturally connect to anything about that person's face, their personality, or who they are. Sarah does not tell you anything about Sarah. The information has no hook to hold onto. Researchers who study memory have a name for this. It is called the Baker-Baker paradox, and there was actually a well-known study where people were shown a face, along with either a person's occupation or their name. For example, the same picture with one group told, "This man is a baker," and another group told, "This man's last name is Baker." Later, the group who learned the occupation remembered it far more often than the group who learned the name, even though the word baker was identical in both cases. The only difference was meaning. A profession connects to something in your brain. A surname, even a meaningful-sounding one like Baker, gets processed as just a label, completely disconnected from anything else about that person. Your brain has nothing to grab onto, so it lets go almost immediately.
Now here is the second piece, and this one is going to feel very familiar if you struggle with this. The moment someone tells you their name is usually the exact moment your brain is busiest doing something else entirely. Think about what is actually happening the second you meet someone new. You are processing their face. You are thinking about what to say next. You might be slightly nervous, especially if it is a social situation that already feels a little uncomfortable. You're reading their tone, their body language, deciding how to respond. Your brain is doing an enormous amount of work in that exact moment. And right in the middle of all of that, they say their name, usually just once, usually quickly. And because your attention is split in so many directions at once, the name simply does not get the focused attention it needs to actually stick. Psychologists call this divided attention, and it has been studied for decades when it comes to memory formation. When your attention is split between multiple things happening at once, your brain does not properly encode any one piece of that information deeply. It is like trying to write something down while someone is also asking you a question. You might technically hear the name, but you never actually processed it with enough focus for it to become a real memory. This is why people who struggle with this often say something like, "I heard the name, I just do not remember it." That is not you exaggerating. That is exactly what happened on a neurological level. The information entered your ears, but it never moved deep enough into your memory to be retrievable later.
There's a third thing going on here that is honestly a little bit funny once you see it for what it is. A lot of people who forget names easily are actually more socially anxious than they appear, even if they seem confident on the outside. Here is why that matters. When you are even slightly anxious in a social moment, meeting someone new, walking into a room full of people, your brain shifts a huge portion of its attention toward monitoring yourself. Did I say something weird? Do I seem normal right now? Is this person judging me? That self-monitoring takes up real mental space, the same mental space that would otherwise be used to actually absorb what the other person is telling you, including their name. This has actually been studied in research on social anxiety and memory performance, where people with higher social anxiety during a conversation consistently performed worse on recalling details from that same conversation afterward, including names, compared to people who felt calm and at ease. Not because anxious people care less about others, often it is the complete opposite. They care so much about the interaction going well that their brain gets stuck worrying about themselves instead of fully absorbing the other person. So if you are someone who forgets names easily and also tends to feel a little nervous meeting new people, those two things are very likely connected. Your brain was simply too busy protecting you from social embarrassment to properly store the one piece of information that, ironically, would have prevented embarrassment later.
Now, let us talk about something that might genuinely surprise you, because it flips the whole story around. People who forget names easily are very often the same people who remember everything else about a person almost perfectly. The story they told about their dog, the fact that they just moved apartments, the small joke they made halfway through the conversation, the way they laughed when something surprised them. This actually makes complete sense once you understand how memory works. Names are abstract. Stories, emotions, and small human details are not. Your brain is built to hold on to meaning, emotion, and connection far more naturally than it holds onto a random label like a name. So, if you constantly forget someone's name, but you remember the actual person, the actual conversation, the actual feeling of talking to them, that is not a memory problem. If anything, it might mean you are paying attention to the things that genuinely matter in a relationship, just not the one specific detail that happens to be the hardest thing for any human brain to retain.
So, what can you actually do about this? Because understanding it is helpful, but most people also want a way to fix it. The most effective thing, according to research on memory and learning, is something called active retrieval combined with association. In simple terms, this means using the name immediately and connecting it to something. When someone tells you their name, say it back to them right away in the same conversation. Something as simple as, "It is nice to meet you, Daniel," forces your brain to actually use the name instead of just passively hearing it. Then, if you can, try to quickly connect it to something. Daniel works in finance. Daniel has the same name as your cousin. Daniel reminds you of someone from a show you watched. The connection does not need to be clever or meaningful to anyone else. It just needs to exist, because that connection is the hook your brain was missing in the first place. It also helps to simply accept that hearing a name once in a noisy or distracting environment while you are also nervous and thinking about what to say next was never a fair test for your memory to begin with. You are not failing at something easy. You are succeeding at something genuinely difficult, just maybe not on the very first attempt.
Here is the thing worth remembering through all of this. Forgetting someone's name does not mean you do not care about them. It does not mean you are bad with people. Very often, it means the complete opposite. It means you were present in the actual moment of connecting with them, even if one small detail slipped through the cracks while everything else about that person stayed with you. The next time you forget a name and feel that familiar flash of embarrassment, remind yourself of what is actually happening underneath it. Your brain was not careless. It was simply doing what every human brain does with information that has no natural place to land. You are not bad with names. You're just human, dealing with a very human, very common, very explainable thing. See you in the next one.